Good morning, my fellow Malaysians. I see a lot on social media that some people are really angry that Mara is only for the Malays and refuses to admit local non Malays who have better marks than those who get admission. It's always been suggested that public money that is raised from our taxes, as the majority of taxes are paid by the Chinese and the Indians, should not be used exclusively for the benefit of the Malays. Let's look at it historically. The NEP was founded to give the Malays a chance to catch up with the non-Malays, though my Malay classmates were just as intelligent as all the rest of us, and we saw no need at that time. The new economic policy, which began with the second Malaysia Plan, which was from 1971 to 1975, immediately after the May 13, 1969 racial riots, and this lasted till the fifth Malaysia Plan, which was 1986 to 1990. And this NEP namely had three objectives: to achieve national unity, harmony and integrity through social and economic restructuring of society, to minimize the level of poverty in the country, which meant poverty eradication. The NEP was actually conceived as a two-pronged strategy for eradicating poverty among all Malaysians, as well as reducing and subsequently eliminating identification of race by economic function or geographical location. The policy sought to achieve its objectives through rapid expansion of the economy over time and set its target to substantially reduce the incidence of absolute poverty by 1990. To do this, the policy called for an aggressive improvement of economic status and quality of life for all Malaysians, and this was done through access to land, provision of physical capital, provision of training, and improvement of public facilities. Once this was done, wealth in the hands of the Bumiputras went from 4% in 1970 to about 20% in 1997. The overall wealth of Malaysia also grew, and the per capita GDP went up from 1,142 in 1971 to 12,102 in 1997. During the same period, absolute poverty in the population as a whole dropped from 50% to 6.8%. It's actually unclear what role NEP played in these changes. Now let's look at the NEP benchmarks over time. The Bumiputra equity in 1970 was 2.4%, which was about 477 million ringgit. In 1990, the Bumiputra equity went up to 19.3%, which was about 20.9 billion. Again, in 2004, the Bumiputra equity went up to a staggering 23.5%, which amounted to 73.2 billion ringgit. The overall poverty in Malaysia also declined. In 1970, it was 52%. In 1990, it went down to 17.1%. In 2004, it was down to 5%. Rural poverty in Malaysia also went down substantially. In 1970, it was 59%. In 1990, it dropped to 21.8%, and in 2004, it was 11%. The household income of Malaysians also went up. In 1970, it was 660 ringgit. In 1990, it went up to 1,254. And in 2004, it went up to about 12,000. Sorry, 2,996. Okay. The effects of NEP on wealth distribution are also disputed. The Gini index declined from 5.13 in 1970 to become 4.46 in 1997. The 1987 figures indicate that, the 1997 figures indicate that the mean income of Malays had improved relatively to both Chinese and Indian communities. However, some people have used the 1997 statistics with 70.2% of households at the bottom 40% income rung as Bumiputra and 62.7% of household in the top 20% income bracket as non-Bumiputra. This is just to argue that inequities remain. But I guess this is like creative accounting and juggling of figures, because you are not comparing an apple to apple. The Gini index also began to increase in 1990, going from 4.46 to 4.64 between 1990 to 1995. Meanwhile, the 1997 figures indicated that Chinese incomes were increasing at the rate which was double of the Malays. The intra-ethnic income differences also increased markedly, especially among the Malays, which means the rural and the urban Malays. The Gini index, for those who don't know, is a measure of equality. It is measured from 0, which indicates perfect equality, to 1, which signifies complete inequality. The Gini coefficient in Malaysia is forecast to amount to 0.39 in 2024. The unemployment rate in Malaysia is forecast to 3.52% in 2024. The unemployed people in Malaysia is forecast to 0.64 million in 2024. The employment rate in Malaysia is forecasted to 69.23% in 2024, which is pretty good. Bumiputra participation in professions and the private sector has also increased. Although Bumiputras remain somewhat underrepresented, between 1970 and 1990, the Bumiputra share of accountants doubled from 7 to 14%. Bumiputra engineers went up from 7 to 35%. Bumiputra doctors went up from 4% to 28%, and Bumiputra architects from 4 to 24%. The Bumiputra portion of the share market, a figure which is cited as a measurement of overall community wealth, despite claims it was misleading, increased from 2 to 20% over the same period, according to one academic measurement. The Chinese share also increased from 37 to 46% at the expense of foreign participation. The official Kuala Lumpur Stock Exchange figures from 1998 were even more optimistic, indicated that the Bhumiputra share of ownership stood at 28.6% in 1990 to 36.7% in 1996. Sadly, the Bhumiputras sell their shares as soon as the prices double or triple and cash in their gains. And this is why the Bhumiputra share keeps dropping, and they claim that they have not achieved the 30% when compared to non-Malays. At present, more than 90% of the civil service is Bhumiputra. Most ministers in our country are also Malays. A very large majority of the police force and the armed forces are Malay. Sadly, most of the corruption in this country is also by Malays. Let's look at Tabung Haji, Felda, Mara, MDB1. These are glaring examples, and losses have been made good with public funds, of which the non-Malays are the major contributors. The Auditor General pointed this out in his report of the defects in Felda, Mara, also MDB, but nothing has been done to date by the Madani government. The people who stole the money, out of which only Dato Najib is in jail at the moment, and even his jail sentence and fines are being reduced. Rightfully, all his family property should be seized and sold to get back the money he stole from the public. The NEP that started in 1970 and was meant to last till 1990 was continued by the UMNO government and is still practiced till date. The Prime Minister may want meritocracy, but the civil service will continue as they wish, because the majority of them are Malays and they stand to benefit from the NEP. The call for not using public funds for Malay institution, which is growing, and I'm afraid if this is done, this will increase racial tension in Malaysia. I am not in favor of this, but perhaps the right thing to do would be to admit non-Malays into these institutions and follow the meritocratic principles which have succeeded in our neighboring country. Our brightest students are going to the UK, Singapore, and also to the US, and they are innovating new discoveries and procedures in all fields, including medicine, and they bring glory to their adopted countries, while we in Malaysia have politicians who thrive creating racial issues that actually do not exist in the general population. I am happy to see more and more Malays like Professor Tajuddin, UKM Professor Raja, who's head of cardiology, encourage meritocracy in Malaysia, and also our former law minister Zahid Ibrahim, as well as many more Malays who have come out on YouTube in support of meritocracy. The PM must have the courage to make these changes, or it is doubtful if the Madani government will be re-elected, and they would have lost a big opportunity to make a difference. Thank you for listening, and I hope all Malaysians give this a thought, as we have elected this government and we have a choice who we wish to elect in the coming elections. Please comment, like, and share if you agree or even disagree with me. Bye for now. This is Dr. K.N. Singh with Food for Thought from Johor Bahru. Bye for now.